Okay, so we're going to immediately get into Culture Corner. Here is this video that I saw. I have not heard of this podcast, Queering Desi, but as a Desi person, I was very excited to hear about this. It's being highlighted by Brown Girl Magazine. I follow this account on my personal accounts. I'll subscribe here. And I wanted to show this overview, and we'll be checking out the podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Queering Desi, a Brown Girl Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Priya. As a South Asian, queer, cisgendered woman, I have learned a lot on my journey of self-acceptance and building community. So each week, I will bring you a slice of South Asian LGBTQ life with a guest who exemplifies what it means to be who you are and to live your truth.
So they're
Queering Desi came up.
It sounds like they were playing part of the podcast in person for this interview.
I want to say at least a year and a half ago, at least as a brainchild and brain thought. It just came together as, why don't I start a podcast and give literal voice to some of the people that I've met along my journey that have made it so much easier for me.
Growing up in California was not always easy for Priya Arora. She knew that there was something different about her, but didn't quite realize what it was.
I didn't think you could be South Asian LGBTQ. I Googled gay Desi, and I found a website called Desi Family based in India. And I started writing for them under a pseudonym because I wasn't out with my family yet. And I snuck out one night to go to a mudra night.
Mudra. A form of dance originated by courtesans during the Mughal era. I guess I could have given this a little introduction. We're celebrating Pride Month in full swing, so this came out a while ago, obviously. Queens, and of course, there's no better way than sharing our very own podcast, Queering Desi's host the Priya Arora's story, captured so eloquently on a short documentary.
And there were these people in drag. The community in that house that night moved me to realize that you could be brown and queer and all these things and have a life.
Since moving to New York, Priya has been a strong advocate of fostering supportive community. She ran an identity team dealing with gender and sexuality at Brown Girl Magazine and is now a front-page editor at Huffington Post.
Oh my God, I can't.
A big part of Priya's support system is her fiancé Rima Tarani.
Front.
Like this?
Yeah.
No? It's always like that, on the side.
Do you change your head like that?
Sometimes when I want to show off.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, let me tell you something, okay? You know how they say behind every successful man there's a woman? Behind every successful woman there's another woman. So
Well,
I am that woman, okay?
Rima was
cute.
Priya's first guest on the show.
Yes. Well, so what's your goals for the coming episodes? The coming episodes, I mean, my goal so far, and I think they've done so well thus far, is trying to be really eclectic in my mix of identities, right? So having you, my partner, talk about bisexuality or your faith or all those things, having a parent on, having an Indo-Korean.
I love how on the family photo it showed chosen family as well, that this is such a huge aspect of queer identity, largely when it comes to the marginalization that can happen to queer people, and how chosen family has been a necessity for many people. Like, I have experienced this as well, of choosing the people that you feel like love you for who you are, not that it has to be earned or you have to conform to people's expectations. It's not only a way to take power back, but also to engage in self-love and empower other people around you, where you can create relationships and a supportive system that you have wanted all along, that it can be a very beautiful reclaiming.
Men on there is a little burden of how do I make sure everyone's voices are heard? And obviously that's impossible, right? Everyone's voices can't be heard. But sometimes I think it's enough for the people who can't even express or can't come out of the shadows and express their solidarity with this podcast to be able to know that that attempt is being made or that their stories matter. And so on Twitter and on Facebook, I've often kind of posted for the people that aren't reaching out, for the people that feel invisible and feel unheard, this is for them.
Priya wants queer Desis to feel less alone. A recent episode of her podcast featured Aruna Rao, mother to a queer daughter and founder of Desi Rainbow Parents and Allies.
It was really lonely for me, when my daughter came out to me. And even though I thought of myself as someone who was well equipped to handle, my child coming out, it was still very, very isolating. And so when I started looking around for support and I realized all the support that was available was really not for people of my ethnicity or race or, frankly, there was almost nothing for brown people. And when I did go to PFLAG spaces, which were very welcoming and supportive, I still found that, again, I felt like I was the token immigrant.
Priya believed,
of being tokenized in these spaces, that within queer spaces, there can be racism, there can be tokenization. This is very real. There can be transphobia. There can be all kinds of forms of discrimination, of invisibilizing non-binary people. It's like this is very real, especially when it comes to white liberal spaces, that they may have rainbows everywhere, but it may also not be an environment where all people feel included. And so or it's accessible for people with disabilities as well. So all of these things are factors when it comes to people having safe spaces to be in. And it is a difficult concept to deal with, that that every queer space needs to engage with, that there are many people that feel like these kinds of spaces do not meet all of their needs, and that often it forces people to create spaces of their own. And so in some ways, that means that there is more robust organizing that's coming from a very grassroots level of people having to create these spaces themselves. But it also goes to show how everyday people are constantly feeling the need to fill in the gaps when it comes to these places that should be safe spaces. And even if they try to have racist, anti-racist mantras or mission statements, it's what is being done in practice that is very important. And so a lot of the time it does force people to have to engage in this kind of organizing themselves. So it's that double-edged sword of okay, so it's good to have some spaces, but also people go into these spaces and then experience a lot of the same kinds of discrimination or tokenization that they experience just in the world at large, and that it still falls on people as a burden to create these spaces themselves.
there is much to discuss about the queer South Asian identity and plans to bring her podcast back for another season in the fall. As she plans her wedding, with her parents supporting her lifestyle, Priya looks back at her journey.
Having
Coming
date
out
night
has
on the
been
calendar.
something that is not just one thing or one day. It's every day with my family, talking about my partner, talking about my work, talking about my podcast, and them learning the language, learning how to open their community, their hearts to it as well. How do I navigate the world as a queer woman of color, dressing masculine of center? I get misgendered sometimes. I get looked at a lot of times. So those are the things that compass my journey. And more than anything, I would say looking back on the journey has been just being able to find self-acceptance and self-love, to be able to embrace all aspects of imperfection and being able to label ourselves. So if I do identify as a queer woman of color, that's not the only thing that defines me, nor do I contain myself within those labels either.
Yeah, very cool. I don't know if this podcast is still going, which I need to do that research and see. But it is very cool that she was able to do that. It's very needed. And the fact that, you know, she's talking about, especially that last part of feeling like there's this continual education that must be done, like if you want to maintain relationships with family members, um, and also making sure that like there is a space for people. I was gonna say something else and then I got distracted or I lost my train of thought. Okay, so this is a song by Dog Park Dissidents called Trans Starship Feminist BDSM Paradise that is great that I wanted to play. I also am going to go grab a drink real quick, so I'll be right back. But I want to play this.
Taking on to see through time and space to a place where the girls wear blue and the boys wear leashes. And leave when there is a difference. Remember the chick called fast so she saw the self. And she's wearing a strap on and slapping your ass with a lion's belt. Oh, while you're hanging from the ceiling. One of the boyfriends introduced you to her. Now he's one of your boyfriends, cause you want to impress her. Yeah, this is how the world ends. You get paid by a little up trans man on the view screen. Orders you had to macho, you booze and you pick up lines, but now it's the future. And in the new world, you can only get girls if you suck a lot of dick. Cruising on the trans starship, feminist BDSM paradise. Now Clarence Joe said if you have the time, you can watch her put her penis into his vagina. But if Mr. calls, you'll have to decline. Your girl insists you're a bottom slut, you're inclined to agree, getting fucked in the butt as she watches from the middle of the brother on deck 5. This is how the world ends. If you hold a whiskey top strap, then no one will want you. Those things you have to stoop to get any love around here. Well, maybe you like it. From legs to your pecs, when your nerdy girlfriend chills off to you sucking on a dick. Cruising on the trans starship, feminist BDSM paradise. You have never been with Sheba in the anal sex you got from boy. Leads double X and with a whiplash. You'll take him to task for all the things you did before the patriarchy was smashed. Now you're tied down by the watchful eyes of all the women that you'd ever objectify. The simple cis that man, go and fuck yourself. And the best part is if that's what you want done. This is how the world ends. With a blast of a warped up power by your cis male tears.
By your cis male tears. I'm going to say, like, the vocals themselves are not necessarily my favorite out of the various songs of this band, Dog Park Dissidents. I do really enjoy the message of this, and I think we need to be hearing it. It's just unapologetically pro-queer, and especially with the name of it, of talking about how, like, yeah, this is what these are what queer relationships look like, and how it's saying like a double X, meaning like double X chromosomes as a man, of like people being caught up in like, what does it actually mean to be a man and a woman? Are we talking about chromosomes? Are we talking about hormones? Are we talking about like anatomy? And it all is so slippery, and like the world is extremely queer. Nature is very queer. Humans are very queer. It is natural, and it is embracing this fact.
Cat called in the cat and nine tails coming at you. It's a utopia. 'Cause in the new world you get bitten by a girl 'cause it's such a fucking dick. Cruising on the trans starship, feminist BDSM paradise. Cruising on the trans starship, feminist BDSM peril.
Especially taking back or reclaiming Star Wars, it is largely thought of to be a very cishet male cultural phenomenon, and to actually, it does lend itself very much to queerness, but it's reclaiming a lot of that, and I love that. Okay, so something that you brought up, Turd Bomb, is the Philharmonic had this Tiny Desk concert that I wanted to show that came out pretty recently on May 29th. Winner of the 2024 Tiny Desk contest. So I'm excited to see this. This may have like a copyright thing. NPR can be pretty strict about that. So if it happens to like go quiet or something, or it's like muting it for some reason, feel free to let me know.
Anything that I wanted to be. Well, God said you can't make money and fulfill your dreams. But if you look at the people that are better than me, trying to find a way around this power scheme. What's it all mean? 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 Get up, go to work.
Those vocals are so good. His, and also backup.
What's it all mean? 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 Should I drink or do drugs since I only live once? Or ask God for some help so I don't go to hell? Or invest in my health and acquire much wealth? I don't waste all day, cause we end up the same. What's it all mean? 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 If I keep it slow and steady, then I win the race. Got my eyes on the prize, let's take it day by day. Even though on the journey we might fall on the way. Now if you fall 7 times, make sure you get back up, babe. What's it all mean? What's it all mean? That's what it all means. What's it all mean? What's it all mean? That's what it all means. What goes up must come down. Goes about, goes around. Bound to something to fall. Life itself still evolves. Lots of things we don't know. Always more room to grow.
I like that change up.
After we're dead and gone, life goes on, life goes on, life goes on. Life goes on, life goes on, life goes on.
Okay, so he began his start. Had his start in Cleveland, where he was born. Began taking classical piano lessons at the age of 6. After he attended a concert with his mom. That's cute. I'm reading this on his website.
On this song, Jeffrey, I got to have you take a 15.
I know it's the beginning of your shift, but
I'm pretending that he's the manager.
this song is for all of those who have thought about doing alternative things because their paycheck was not enough. Approaching the first of the month, I don't think I have enough to even afford my rent. I'm losing my will to live. Once I hit age 26, I'm off of my mom's coverage. When she said get a real job, I probably should have listened. Finances taking a hit. I should go back to college, rack up 6 figures in debt for a job I might not even get. What's even the point of degrees if I'ma end up on the street or working for Mickey D's? That's that bullshit I don't need. Now, the other option on my mind is not one that I usually try. But for the first time in my life, I think I might sell drugs. La, 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 la. Never mattered, but I'm really needing that fast food. I better hope the money stacks up, or my landlord will tell me to pack up. It's true that nobody gives a fuck unless it results in a surplus. That make you want to sell pole up, don't make it grow up without growing up. And the job fucking seem to fail. I should kill in black market retail. At least then the bread would never stay. Son on the people that never cared, never grow up on our platters. But instead I became a rapper in my 20s so I could just have fun. But now I only be lacking funds. So now regret is on my mind.
The American struggle.
Try. But for the first time in my life, I think I might sell drugs. You got it.
Apparently his first piano teacher played for the Cleveland Orchestra. That's very cool.
For the first time in my life. For the 30th time in my life, I think I might sell drugs. The honest truth about adulthood is that it's full of empty promises. I guess if you look at the positives, you'll figure out everyone's winging it. My high school reunion is coming up. I'm mad I don't even have time to stun on the people that didn't believe in me. That day is coming, I swear you see.
His parents must have been doing pretty well for him to have lessons like that. I mean, it may depend.
That's the reason I don't feel nice. People committing violent crimes so they can afford to live their life. Sleep on the roofs on sunny nights. Who are you to
Or maybe he was like good enough as well to be noticed in that way.
Who are you to judge? Who are you to judge?
But also in like relation to this song of like it doesn't always insulate you from the experience of feeling like it's very difficult to make ends meet as an adult, you know, especially for young people these days. Wow. I love that little detail, the guitar at the end. Very talented band as well.
Hi, I'm the Philharmonic. My real
Hello,
name is Chris
Tan.
Gates.
Welcome.
Been doing this for a long time, but I know that in order to reach the
I
next
finished
level,
your
you gotta have a
bracelet
team with you. Everything
today.
is a group effort. This office
Hello,
is a group
welcome.
effort, and this is just another day at the
Namaste.
office. But I want to introduce y'all to my personnel, my friends, and my musicians.
I also finished
So,
my
we're gonna
note
start
to you. I don't know
from
if it would be
my
easier
left
to
to
do
your right,
something
all the way
in like Signal
My right to your
or
left.
getting it to you. Whatever you're most comfortable with.
Well, on the background vocalist, we got Alicia Hall and Mariah Wenzel, a heart
New
and soul.
emotes.
And on rhythm guitar, on my far left, we got
You're
Tyler
okay.
Chavez. But not only does he do guitar, he does a little bit of
Go
background that you saw
vegan.
earlier. Behind me, you got legend Darius Upshaw on the guitar.
Got my Mac charged. Oh,
And behind
thank
him, we
you.
got Jimmy Tour on the flutes.
Yeah, I'm also a little more prepared
Samuel
today.
Phelps on the bass.
I'm like, maybe I should have like locked down things more before
Miller on the drums.
talking more about certain topics.
Partner in crime on the keys, Jeffrey Archie Jr. And this song is called
But so is the sword. Hello.
Chase It.
I also finished your note that I wrote to you. So in getting it to you, I don't know what you would prefer, like what the way to go about sharing that information, what you're most comfortable with. I don't know if you have Signal. Okay. That sounds good. Yeah, whatever you are comfortable with. And there's no rush on that.
Yet I'll chase temporary satisfaction. Then I wonder why I always feel I'm lacking. Despite
This is the
having
artist
everything I
the
need
Philharmonic, not just Philharmonic.
throughout life, and its obstacles will fade.
Very talented. Won the 2024 Tiny Desk competition.
Some will say the only way is to endure all joy and pain. Though at times it may seem in vain.
You can feel the,
Chasing after the wind,
I mean, many inspirations here, but a lot of Stevie Wonder.
chasing things that never bring no change. Chasing what's the
Very
point when
vibey.
there's no use in waiting, waiting on what won't change. Over time, when life's magic
Friend who would
seems
love to attend this.
hand in light, does it shine like a
Attend a Tiny Desk concert. Attend Culture Corner.
covered by all the clouds and gray? Remember there'll be better days.
Yes, for Tiny Desk.
Turning over
You know, I would love to go to one of these.
thus is life, for the seasons come and go. And that I know it's best to surrender all my sorrows and
It's
pain.
Friday.
Accepting what comes my
Earth, Wind, and
way.
Fire. Yeah, Commodores.
Chasing after the wind.
Yeah, some Prince in there. Michael.
Things that never bear no shade. What's the point when there's no use in waiting? Waiting on what won't change.
Has it been muted at all on your all's end? Is that a new emote? Okay. Groovin'. Amazing. Yeah. I feel like they've been in some ways, like, Twitch has, like, loosened up with some music things, unless it's stuff that's coming from, like, these more, like, formal media outlets, like NPR. That's good to know. Thank you. I bet that it'll be muted on the Twitch. Yeah, you're probably right. And uploading it to YouTube, it will probably be muted, or there's a copyright. NPR, any of the, like, even like the, like, or not even, especially like SNL or like the, like, late night host shows. Those are usually copywritten. Can't wait for your beard to grow back. Thank you. I do have some stubble. The not drawn on beard that I'm currently growing out. I have some hairs that I'm trimming that I'm very proud of. Show emotion and we think they're gonna think of us less. But you bless, you should never ever think that you less. Cause in the end we always our biggest enemies. But it's always against each other that we compete. 9 times out of 10 is how it tends to be. Though this observation can be really hard to see. But if there's one thing that I hope you never fail to notice, is that our music's still beautiful though the record's broken. If all we want in life is unconditional love, then what we want is what we have to become, and that's love. If I told you I'll see color shoes, that's about when the light is inside of you. Maybe then I hope you recognize the truth be the opposite from the side. Don't you know I get to look at God every time I look at you. Okay, so that previous song, not the one before, but the one before that, Drugs. In 2019, the Philharmonic toured the US and Canada for the release of that song. And then his third album, Philharmonic, came out in 2022. He's extremely versatile. Crack is my favorite. Glove. Your first gray hair? Was it on your head? Or you're just like in like facial hair? I guess that's a personal question. You don't have to answer. Yes. I love the meaning behind his music. On your beard, right around the chin. You're distinguished. You're not like you weren't before, but your hair follicles are making it official. Well, not only is the music just the music is tight with how it's written. So groovy. I feel like there are so many, like, one of the, not to interrupt the grooving, sorry. If something can sound like familiar while also being like new, that is the key. That is like the magic. Just like synthesizing things in a different way. The song Pay Me. Outside of music, he enjoys, because his name is Christian Gates. Wait, where did I just lost my spot. Christian enjoys golf, bowling, introspection, wow, and spending quality time with family and friends. That's sweet. All the emote. You know, dopamine to the brain. Clear applause. Excellent.
Thank y'all.
Whoop.
Not so good news for you guys. Upper management just hit me up and said there will be no raises for this quarter. So
There will be no raises.
we do have a pizza party in the back room.
Everybody, file out. The meeting adjourned.
The manager, is that what she just said? I love the bit of him coming in late, like he's like, "Oh, I'm late for my set." Meeting adjourned. Very talented. That win was very deserved. Okay, I wanted to play this song by Big Freedia, a queer icon who has been around for a long time with bounce music in New Orleans and house music with in queer nightlife. Big Freedia has been sampled a lot, worked with a lot of big artists, and still to this day, I think is not given as much credit and notoriety as what she deserves. So I wanted to play one of her newest things that came out for Pride Month. She has 3 songs that came out, and this song Let Me See Ya features Sophie and Muna. I didn't know it featured Muna. I don't think they're like credited on like the title of the song at least, but Sophie is a trans artist who passed away sadly a couple of years ago, who is extremely talented and pioneered a lot of the hyper pop sound that we know of today, like the very like industrial sounding that like she would create beats from scratch and just layer them. So it wasn't like any sort of instrument. It was just with her Mac and layering music that way, which is really wild. Just like a very modern way to be creating music. So a lot of the sounds that we hear today, like especially with all the hyper pop girlies, they can give a lot of credit to Sophie. The manager coming late and getting mad at employees for coming late. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I love that bit because it also is like reflected in his music. And so it's this larger statement. It seems like it's a very simple thing, but it's like, this is what we're all experiencing and it's shitty. And it gets to be very intolerable. And you know what makes it a little more tolerable is when we can put it to a groovy sound that is digestible. So I love that. Okay, so this is, let me see, actually, does this have a description? The third and final single from Released at Last, an EP created from a 2016 recording session with Big Freedia and Sophie. Yeah, so Sophie was so fucking prolific, created so much music that, like, even though she has passed, there still is a ton of music that people have in archives that they have done with her that just hasn't been released. She would produce music. She was an artist herself. What is her most famous album? At least like in pop culture, like other side, Pearl Tears, something. Last Pearl's Tears. This is Sophie. Icon. Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides. Okay, I was way off with Tears, but I think there might be a song on here. Oh, It's Okay to Cry. That's what I was thinking. It is on that album. So just mixing up all of these things. This Product album that she has is very experimental. At the time, it got hardly any notice from people who were like part of the mainstream. It was really just noticed by people in the industry, and they were like, whoa, this is very new. So that's a little bit about Sophie. She lives on with all of this music. The Brat album that Charlie XCX came out with in 2024 was very inspired by a lot of Sophie's music. Charlie XCX has said that like she feels like she was able to find more of her sound when she was able to collaborate with Sophie. I think one of the very first things they worked on was Vroom Vroom. That was what kind of launched Charlie into like underground stardom and recognition, because she had her first album, True Romance, that's really good and I think is still very good. And then there was the, what is it, the Sucker album that had like Boom Clap. That was her attempt at, you know, like getting into the mainstream, and she did, but she didn't like it and felt like it wasn't true to her identity. And then when she collaborated with Sophie, it was kind of a return to her original sound, but like having it be even more hyper pop focused, which at the time that wasn't even really a term. It was just like, oh, we're doing something new. Sitting back and enjoying the content. Lurk for a few. Yeah, do what you need to do. Okay. Big Freedia, I did want to give a little bit of a background for Big Freedia. American rapper, singer, and performer, known for her work in the bounce scene, hip hop bounce music in New Orleans. Freedia has been credited with helping popularize the genre, which had largely been underground, and was developing in the early 1990s. So I think the most amount of people started like being familiar with Big Freedia's music or sound when Beyonce wanted to collaborate with her. So in the song Formation, like, come on ladies, now let's get in formation. And then Break My Soul off of the Renaissance album, that was also, I think, Renaissance is just an ode to Black queer artists who have been in house music and nightlife, and you couldn't create an album like that without including Big Freedia on it. So Muna, they're also talented. Some of their music is better than others. That's my opinion. It can be not as like, I like a good beat for things, and yeah, I know there are many like Muna fans that would be very upset with me saying that, but you know what? It's okay. They're talented. Not all of their music is for me. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Big.
So also that beat, the that it's just playing, that also is very much ballroom, of like having someone do voguing when they are walking for a ball, or voguing is a type of category that people compete in. That voguing, it was invented by queer Black people in Harlem in New York City in the 1980s, and that a lot of music, a lot of slang, a lot of culture in America specifically that young people are using now, especially like that they think comes from TikTok, but actually came from ballroom culture. So like how I say something is fierce, that comes from ballroom. Yeah, like saying slay, or like they ate, or like when people are doing this comes from ballroom. Yeah, or like the category is, that comes from ballroom. Or saying like they understood the assignment, that comes from ballroom. It's like actually understanding what the category is. So like many things that are in queer culture today come from ballroom culture specifically. So we need to give credit where credit is due. But that more like metallic sound. Yes.
Can you do it? Let me see ya. Dance to the beat. Let me see ya. Move your feet. Let me see ya. Bounce to the beat. Let me see ya. Bouncing that ass. Let me see ya.
Sending the link.
Let me see ya. Jumping all around. Let me see ya. Move to the beat. Let me see ya. Moving all around. Jump with it, jump with it. Dance with it, dance with it, dance with it. Clap with it, clap.
It's like some bounce music on top of it. But the like metallic sound, especially with clashing, that's very Sophie branded. Which in ballroom, when people are voguing, especially voguing femme, whether people are assigned female at birth or no, a lot of the time they wear wings that are very cute.
Tell me what you're going out in. I love a girl in a weird outfit. I could see a soul, the students start dancing. Let me see your phone, cause I wanna put my number in. You're a star, shine like Sophie. 1, 2, 3, let me see.
Yeah, shine like Sophie. Muna, they're queer as well. This is a treat for Pride. Some people would say this is the mothership. Even saying someone is mother, that comes from ballroom.
So sweet, so chic, nice girl, mean streak. I know you got it.
You got the killer shit. Let me see ya. Dance to the beat. Let me see ya. Move your feet. Let me see ya. Bounce to the beat. Let me see ya. Bouncing that ass. Let me see ya. Jump to the beat. Let me see ya. Jumping all around. Let me see ya. Move to the beat. Let me see ya. Moving all around. Let me see ya. Dance to the beat. Let me see ya. Move your feet. Let me see ya. Bounce to the beat. Let me see ya. Bouncing that ass. Let me see ya. Jump to the beat. Let me see ya. Jumping all around. Let me see ya. Move to the beat. Let me see ya. Moving all around. Jump with it, jump with it.
Well, yes. Okay. So good. So much talent in one song. Hello, Aliana. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Things are much calmer today, to everyone's relief. Okay. So let's get into this conversation of the various actors who have played Othello. This is from a podcast called A Bit Lit, and it is about literature. So, play on words. And this is featuring Miles Grier, who is a book and theater historian. I'm guessing like literature and theater historian. And I'm just going over the introduction. Tells us about the place of Shakespeare's Othello in a long moment of shared vernacular literacy as a colonizing tool. Yes. Grier insists that this is a play that implicitly summons an audience of white experts, and connects us both to the use of blackface paint for most of the play's long history on stage, and to the history of black actors taking on the central role. Why does this indestructible play live on, Grier asks, as a vector of authority? So this is our transition. We're transing, because same. Into Othello, continuing with talking about culture, the history of Othello, and actors that have played Othello. So,
Miles, hello, how are you?
Hi, Andy. I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you.
Actually, I might need to refresh this because this is what happens. Whoa, 22.
Then see if you still like it.
Miles, hello, how are you?
Hi, Andy. I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I should warn our viewers that before I pressed record for this film, you made me laugh so much that I temporarily lost my voice. So I'm very excited and nervous for this film, in which who knows what might happen. And I'm delighted that Sarah Vaughan is the presiding deity over our conversation.
Yes, you've raised expectations too high. Now people that aren't laughing from the word go or who aren't serenaded by Sarah Vaughan will automatically, tune out. So...
Okay, well, I'll lower expectations. I have a weird sense of humor, so, I'm not saying anything about how hilarious it was for anyone else. Just
I have a weird sense of humor. I'm just now, insulting him.
I'm not funny. I'm never.
May I ask you, when you finished having your drink, whether you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work, please?
Sure, yes. So I'm Miles Grier. I am an assistant professor at Queens College CUNY in New York. The epicenter of the epicenter in terms of COVID. So it's been quite a past few months here.
This was when COVID happened? I didn't realize.
Scholars talk about the
5
long
years
18th
ago.
century going from the Restoration in the 1660s to 1820. And we are currently living in the long 2020. It is clearly not over. But
the long 2020.
I teach in the English department. And I sometimes say that I do various renaissances, the English Renaissance, the American Renaissance, and the Harlem Renaissance. That's not the entirety of what I do, but it's a good shorthand for some of the concerns and questions that brought me to my intellectual work. So I'm currently finishing a book which is tentatively titled Ink Face, Atlantic, that is no longer the subtitle. The Formation of White Interpretive, Othello and the Formation of White Interpretive Community, 1604 to 1855.
Sometimes I know.
So that gets at least the English Renaissance and the American Renaissance in.
That time really just
what I'm looking at is a sort
escalated all of the politics we're experiencing now, too.
Of Othello. A history that is actually determined less.
I think this is my quick insertion about 2020. I think it also, and not to interrupt,
by what scholars have usually looked at.
Okay. I wanted to have him finish that clause at least and end on a better frame. Sorry, Miles. I think it also like exacerbated the loneliness epidemic, so-called loneliness epidemic, because what is being experienced with all of that is primarily like patriarchal forces that were already pushing back against what many people are calling like woke one, of like saying like, oh, well, we can't talk about certain things, you're saying everything's my fault. And it's like, no, we're talking about systems. This is why we need to keep learning about what these even mean. That would be helpful. But I think it did not help, certainly, that the manosphere was already building and that people were hyper online and extra lonely, that there were not as many like in-person interactions. This is for everyone's safety, of course, which was necessary in order to make it so that we didn't have even more deaths happening because of COVID. But people not being able, especially young people, not being able to feel like they could have as much like sexual exploration just with themselves or other people, with families being around all the time. And that it just kind of led to this heightened situation of things that were already at play, and that the politics that were already in the works of what we see now, it just got completely heightened. Anyway.
High points, for example, in the transshipment of Africans across the Atlantic. And they've sort of looked at those kinds of moments as determining how Othello was staged and what it could mean. And my sense is that theater has its own conventions that allow for characters to be recognizable across time. And in the case of Othello, the theatrical convention across 1604 to 1855 that's actually relatively stable is the use of blackface. And once we start paying attention to that makeup, we start to see that the questions that we've usually asked, well, what does Moor mean? Does it mean North African? Does it mean Sub-Saharan African? How many Black people lived in Shakespeare's London? That those questions pale in comparison, forgive me, to pale in comparison to the question of how makeup acts on stage. And this particular Black makeup transfers from Othello to Desdemona. And so you get his final couplet, which people have not paid close enough attention to as a sort of document of actual a staged event. He says, I kissed thee ere I killed thee, no way but this, killing myself to die upon a kiss. And I always thought it was die, bite the big one. But in fact, it is die, as in stain. He stains Desdemona with his kiss. And once we start to think about that pun, I mean, of course, he does both, right? But once we start to think about that pun, a lot of different moments in the play read very differently. And we also start to see that in terms of the history of race, Richard Burbage, Edmund Kean, well, he played it in brownface, but these Othellos who were white men who were painted can dye Desdemona with their kiss. And Robeson, James Earl Jones, Lawrence Fishburne cannot. And so the Black person who is involved in Shakespeare's Othello has no relation to the Black person that I am, right? Because this particular Moor has this function of dying with his kiss and sort of leaving this telltale stain on Desdemona that marks her as a dishonest woman. I mean, it's not true. She isn't a dishonest woman, right? And the same mark that makes her appear to be unfaithful. You know, we talk about a black mark against her character. The same black mark against her character is actually really just, you know, Othello's monograph, you know, you know, or I'm sorry, monogram, you know, that he has, you know, kind of put his signature on her. But because black is sort of overdetermined as this mark of sinfulness, you know, adultery, dishonesty, slavery, even, Desdemona dies doubly. So that's part one of this. And the last piece that I'll say right now is that the other kind of weird thing about that emerges when we start to pay attention to things like makeup is that Othello compares Desdemona to paper. And so his blackness is also the blackness of ink. You know, he says, was this fair paper, this most goodly book, made to write whore upon? And so this also becomes a play about literacy. And for my money, the racial work and the gendered work that the play does has to do with creating a class of people who are understood as reading material. They've been marked with the same blackness that is the blackness of ink. And therefore, they are not part of this elite literate white fraternity that the Venetian senators are a part of, which is why that long, tedious bit about the movements of the Turk at the, you know, Act 1, I think that's Act 1, Scene 5. It's all paperwork, right? It's all bureaucratic. Messages are coming in, you know, some are oral, some are written, and the senators of Venice have to read between the lines, as it were. And Othello and Desdemona, both of whom are blackened over the course of the play, wind up being the bad readers. And so what you get implicitly, and that's what the book is really about, what you get implicitly is this fraternity of literate white men. And this is at the same moment, well, a long moment, 1604 to 1855, where literacy is becoming a shared property, a kind of state project, right? You know, that it's no longer just going to be priests that are literate.
The
but
printing
this idea
press.
that vernacular literacy is going to be something the state is interested in promoting. You know, we tend to think of that as just like functional, right? We're going to teach the alphabet, but it's like, no, it has these religious connotations because we're teaching, you know, literacy through the Bible. And so that means if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, right, you know, and you're not, and the Bible is not your text, or for that matter, if you're Native American, if the Bible is not your text, then you're automatically being excluded from this seemingly neutral technology of literacy. So it has this weird implicit kind of racial politics of creating a group of people who are thought of as masterful readers and sort of able to commune with God and able to interpret the world. And those people who are thought of as not only, as I said, reading material, but also as sort of bad readers and producers of nonsense. So that, in a nutshell, is the project. You know, it ends with Mike Brown and Christine Blasey Ford here in the U.S. Because I want to show that this kind of fraternity of white male experts with a kind of unimpeachable credibility has persisted, you know, to this day, and that suspect women and suspect Negroes still have difficulty being heard and being thought of as credible, and that this indestructible play, Othello, is sort of is a vector through which we can trace how that sort of interpretive authority got created and maintained.
I think, yeah, something, this is why it's so important to actually be hearing from people who can provide more context with the racializing that happens in this play, and how the racializing through interpretations of the play has persisted, and how it has been done through the lens of these larger political structures. It also, I think, is a way to highlight how the written word has always been classist in nature, and that people who have not had the chance to learn to read, this is often dictated by, the powers that be, and how there is funding with programming and education for people, but also it goes back to colonial times of the written word being used to impose culture and dominance and justify this power imbalance, to genocide people and extract resources, steal land, and it is to erase oral cultures and oral traditions as well. And to say, like, well, if you can't read, if you are what he is saying, a quote unquote bad reader, then that means that you aren't as smart or as intelligent, and that you don't have as much value in a society that is inherently colonial. And if we're saying colonial, it just is also inherently classist as well. Just so that we can get to the reading, I think I may speed this up a bit.
Wow, thank you. That was a lot, so I need to stop and
I know.
unpack some of that. It's fantastic. Thank you very much, Miles. One of the kind of through lines through a lot of the different things you said there is about how time and moments can have unexpectedly long durations. You talked about a long moment at one point, and we are, as you say, in long 2020, and we'll probably be here for many decades to come. Sorry, everybody.
Please. Let it not be so.
So if I can just work through a few of those things. I'm fascinated by what you say about that very long scene at the start of Othello, and I have no idea when Act 1 it occurs, but it occurs at the end of Act 1, right? And Act 1 up to that point has been characterized by really quite short scenes in which men are chasing after something, whether that's Iago and Rodrigo looking for Brabantio's house, or Brabantio then looking for Desdemona, and then there's great chaos on the streets as people are looking for Othello. Suddenly you go from that world in which, successive iterations of dudes on streets trying to get somewhere else to find something, hunting basically. We suddenly get into the scene of, as you put it, a fraternity of literate white men, and they are the epicenter to which documents and news are brought. So there's a kind of dramaturgical and rhythmical underpinning to some of the things that you're saying there that I think's really fascinating. And then you very modestly kind of confined your account of your work to Othello, but I know from other examples of your work that Titus Andronicus is very important as well, and a more general history of ink facing, if I may borrow your term.
Please.
And it's kind of
tell your friends.
of thinking about racialized identity as a form of bookish ink on black ink on white paper, and vice versa, kind of reading bodies via text and reading text via body. So I definitely like to think a bit more about that, if I may. You very brilliantly described Titus Andronicus as a hidden transcript of non-experts early modern racial thought, and I'd really like to return to that phrase at some point and unpack that with you. And then finally,
another very racialized play in Shakespeare.
Yeah, I love this idea of a kind of long moment of shared vernacular literacy, where that literacy is kind of being wielded as a colonizing tool. Who gets to have literacy, who doesn't, and what gets to count as vernacular and what doesn't. That all feels really important. I feel like I've matched your big picture with another version of the big picture rather than giving us helpful detail. Maybe we should start with Othello as you described it, as the indestructible play.
It's amazing. Thomas Reimer tried to kill it. It was 1693, and he said this thing is crap. It's what? Of course, I'm losing the phrase right now, but something something about an implausible farce. Much ado about a handkerchief and all this kind of thing. People have known the score on Othello for 400 years now.
Maybe we're in Malong 1693 and we just haven't quite got there yet.
Well, it makes me wonder what is appealing about this utterly impossible play. It would seem. I'm sorry, what was that?
Tell us more.
Well, it would seem that we would have dropped it by now. So that makes me wonder, why is it that the implausibility? Let's talk about just one of the forms. Reimer has his sort of litany of implausible things, but let's start with Othello isn't a person. There's nothing plausible. There's no sort of archival grounding, where, people have tried to say, and of course I'm going to get his name wrong, but the Moroccan ambassador who visits Queen Elizabeth, that's the basis for Othello. Well, no, because the Moroccan ambassador goes home. He doesn't say, before I leave, I just have to show you, Elizabeth, that I've always been true to you and I've always been a servant of the state. None of this honorable suicide that, if you are truly an aristocrat in your own country, as Othello says he is, then being fired by the Venetian Senate, what do you care? You know, if you truly are a nobleman and a husband in a patriarchal society, you say, I'm taking my woman and I'm going back to Mauritania. You know, like you just use your patriarchal privilege. So why does that never cross Othello's mind? Why is it only Iago who makes that up as a lie?
I love him
to
pointing
keep
that out.
Rodrigo strung along. You know, why does Othello never think that?
So are you saying in a way that he doesn't think like a migrant, or as someone who has ties elsewhere, or
he doesn't think like an aristocrat. Right. He doesn't think like a man, you know, in the patriarchal sense of it. You know, and I certainly understand, you know, that feminist critics would say, well, he thinks like a man enough to kill his wife. You know, he thinks he has ownership of her. That's certainly true. You know, that's indisputable. But the way to avoid that would be, I'm a man, fire me from the, you know, I don't have to be general of your army. I can go home. You know, I mean, as a very plausible Negro myself, that's what I would do. You know, like, I go home. I don't have to be here. I don't have to take this. You know? And so the fact that he never considers that means that he can't be rooted in any in any kind of social structure. You know, so he says these things, right? Like, I fetch my life and blood from men of noble being, or something like that. But a person who really had that kind of footing in a society could use it, and he doesn't.
Yeah, of like, he represents something that's beyond that. Oh, bless you, sir. Bless you, Miles, for talking about this, because it also highlights that, like, he does not view Othello, the character, does not view his position in society as having staying power as well, and that it means that, like, he either is like buying into more of the, like, he already is buying into these like very racist, discriminatory aspects of living in society that like Shakespeare is creating, but also that there is this element of him being otherworldly and representing something else.
You know, and so I find myself thinking that Othello is more, as I said before, of a function than a person, and his function is to convey this stain to Desdemona. But he's not a plausible person. But then you get the sort of new version of Othello is rooted in something, which is, you know, after Black actors sort of take over the role, it's, you know, Shakespeare felt our pain. You know, Shakespeare wrote a story about, you know, this is what Robeson says, God bless him, you know. But I think the mistake that Robeson made, if I may be so bold to say that he made one, is that it wasn't that that Shakespeare wrote a play that allowed him to expose, that was made for him to expose global apartheid. It's that the act of having a Black person play Othello and kiss a white woman on stage in 1930, I think 1943 is when it premieres on Broadway. It's that because of the expected theatrical conventions of the time, he was sort of able to bring global apartheid and US Jim Crow into crisis. But
yes, it also is revealing, like, how we were talking about in the intro, not to keep interrupting, I'll keep it played after this insertion, but how they're talking about, like, we were reading in the intro that it's not like Shakespeare is being some progressive person. He is writing Othello's character through his own lens, and it is not like how we were talking about the example of like women, of he's not like particularly progressive as like a feminist necessarily, but like because he is wanting to write a play that is engaging with various aspects that like he thinks may lead to like interesting narratives, it doesn't mean that he's necessarily seeing like the humanity in people, or like seeing what liberation is, or like the need for liberation. It is very much coming from a standpoint of having privilege and othering these characters. So, and it is revealed through how flattened they are with a lot of the portrayals of them.
Foresaw that, you know, why would he? Like, I don't do the Shakespeare's Nostradamus, you know, or the Shakespeare's bleeding heart liberal who just sympathized with all God's creatures, great and small. You know, what reason would he have? You know, so I sometimes say that Robeson hijacks Othello, you know, and as I also said, God bless him for doing it. But for us to then think that Othello is socially, historically, or psychologically realistic
Yeah.
is preposterous. But as I said, that then makes me wonder, then why do we want to believe that? And I would say that the answer, I think, is that Othello is a play about character and whether or not it's readable. And we live in a society that demands that we be able to read other people's character. And so we need that to be true for our everyday lives. And so since this is the play that relies on that, well, I don't know about the most, let me not get in trouble, but relies on it in a fundamental way, then we can't quite let it go, you know, because we're still, I mean, you know, all these court cases about sexual assault and sexual harassment wind up hinging on the very thing that, on the very problem that Desdemona faces. How do I convince you I'm not a whore when I'm sort of already marked that way? You know, so we still want to believe that there is a such thing as the woman that's a whore, and that we can determine who does and does not deserve protection by sort of getting to that invisible character that everyone has, and then we'll know, you know, well, that woman is deserving of protection and that one isn't because of her character. Well, you know, what's Desdemona's plight but that? You know, so it seems to me that that's part of why we can't let go of Othello. You know, I mean, I would love to, and I even have a plan for when I might do it. I'd love to have a kind of original performance condition version of Othello, so that you don't have white women and black men, and now sometimes even black women, trying to redeem Othello and Desdemona by putting their own bodies and psychologies and histories and hearts on the line. But let it just be, this is some mindless dude who just stains everybody he touches. And then see if you still like Othello so much. Like,
I would
Othello
love
sort
to
of
see
allowed
that.
To just be that function.
Yeah,
it's a brilliant
instead of this
idea.
sort of symbol of black pain. I think people might decide it's time to fold up shop and do a night. As I said to my high school students once, do Coriolanus, do a play with some nice white people in it. You know,
there are some pretty nasty white people in Coriolanus.
There certainly are. That was the trick. There had been complaint that I did too much stuff with black people, and I said, well, then we'll do Coriolanus. That's fine.
Wow, I dream of a world in which it would be possible to complain of doing too much black early modern history. That sounds great. Bring it on. I mean, I'm wondering if we're pushing here at that phrase I quoted earlier from you. You've written a fantastic essay for Claire Bourne's forthcoming book, Shakespeare Text, where you talk about, as I say, Titus Andronicus being a kind of hidden transcript of non-expert early modern racial thought. And I wonder if some of the things you're telling us about Othello's character are telling us things, are a transcript of Shakespeare's non-expertise. He's unable to imagine how someone in that position might feel or think.
You know, I've never thought of it that way, Andy, that Shakespeare is flaunting his ignorance. But that's certainly true. And it's so nice to be in a place where one could say that. You know, excellent playwright, but get some things wrong, you know? When I wrote that phrase, I was thinking of the tendency of scholars to look for written documents about other people, you know, non-English people, you know, by natural historians, you know, who were the sort of predecessors of biologists, by travel writers, and to assume that what the literate were printing about these other people is the only source we have for what English people really thought of Group X. And I thought, well, we know that literacy was not universal at this point. And we know that what was printed served certain purposes. You know, it wasn't like, you know, you can just self-publish on Kindle. You know, like you had to have some kind of financial or state backing in order to get something printed, you know, as a bound book, right? So the places where we look as scholars and sort of associate with the knowledge of the period, you know, what the shared knowledge of the period, seems to me much less likely a place to look than the theater, which is a place where you can go and have a sense of sort of a shared experience and shared knowledge, even with varying levels of literacy in the audience.
Yeah.
You know, and so what if these plays are conveying something about whiteness as interpretive authority, and blackness not as one ethnic group, but just as that group of people who can't read, right? And you, as a non-literate white person, can still have that experience of going, I know Othello's wife didn't cheat on him. How is he this dumb? I can't even read, and I know that, right? You know, so that the play implicitly summons this sort of audience of white experts, and that's why perhaps it has something to tell us historical that isn't just reflecting the expert knowledge of the period of you know, aspiring scientists and other men of letters. Because it's purposely a spectacle that doesn't require print literacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it a play which assumes, I'm trying to think through the implications of what you're saying, which is fascinating. Is it a play that assumes an all-white audience? Is it a play that's open to racial diversity in the audience, do you think? And
I don't think so. I mean, in its original iteration, I mean, of course, like I said, you know, things can happen that Shakespeare did not foresee. I would only say that Othello with Paul Robeson or James Earl Jones or Lawrence Fishburne as Othello is a different play. And I'm perfectly fine with that, right? But we have to understand that that's not what was being seen in 1604 at Whitehall. That's not, and for centuries after, that is not at all. And that when, I should even go before Paul Robeson, when Ira Aldridge takes over the role, they're purposely trying, by putting their bodies in this previously all-white performance space, they're purposely challenging the institution of slavery or the institution of Jim Crow and apartheid.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's a hijacking, and good on them, but to sort of, since they took all the risk, I don't know why Shakespeare gets all the credit, right?
Right.
Yep, exactly. Of saying like, well, by people doing that and lending their humanity and perspective and talents to these roles, or to the role of Othello, that they are creating more depth in the play than what is actually written in the play when it comes to Othello's characterization, because he isn't viewed as a person. He mostly is like someone for people to be like bouncing their ideas off of. He is a narrative plot device rather than his own person. And so like, thank you, Miles Grier, for talking about these things. I think that's where we're going to have to stop for today, but I do want to finish this next week as we continue reading.